Jimi Hendrix didn't have any hits according to Julian Casablancas of The Strokes. I'm John Bowden from Rock History Music. In a new Vulture interview, the lead singer of The Strokes seems lacking in knowledge when it comes time to talking about Jimi Hendrix. Casablancas, who's about to release a brand new album with his side project, The Voids, is known sometimes for mumbling during interviews, or being quite liberal when it comes to that pregnant pause. You could sometimes park a semi between his words, but I guess he likes to collect his thoughts. Unless, of course, he's talking about Jimi Hendrix. To which he said, people don't realize that it took years for him to get the acclaim that he has now. You look at the charts back then, and he was number 300. He didn't have hits. At that point, the interviewer tells Casablancas that Jimi Hendrix was actually quite popular during his lifetime. Casablancas answers, "No, you're seeing it through the rear view mirror. From what I've seen, I thought he never had any commercial success." At that point, the interviewer again points out that Jimi Hendrix closed Woodstock. He was the headlining act of the biggest music festival of all time. To which Casablancas says, "Okay, let's just look at the numbers." Hendrix moved to England in 1966. He's originally from Seattle. He died on September 18th, 1970. From 66 to 70, and by the way, we're not going to look at any of his side positions as a backing musician with the Isley Brothers or Little Richard. His first success did come from England, where he had 5 top 40 hits. Hey Joe, with Stone Free reaching number 6. Purple Haze was the biggest hit in England, peaking at number 3. Then The Wind Cries Mary at number 6. Then Burning of the Midnight Lamp, number 18. All Along the Watchtower peaked at number 5. And Crosstown Traffic and Gypsy Eyes peaked at number 37. We should point out that he only did have one top 40 hit in the US, and that was All Along the Watchtower, which reached number 20 in 1968. So maybe that's what he was focusing on. We should also point out, of course, the Hendrix albums did very well. Are You Experienced, released in 1967, was certainly a soundtrack for that summer of love that year. It peaked at number 5 in the US, number 2 in the UK. Axis Bold as Love, released in the latter part of 67, reached number 3 in the US, number 5 in the UK. The following year, there was the US number 1 album, Electric Ladyland. It peaked at number 6 in the UK, and all 3 of his live albums did incredibly well. To Casablancas' defense, everyone has holes in their musical knowledge. When you're being interviewed by someone and you're already a rock star and you get something screwed up, especially when it comes to Jimi Hendrix, you know they're going to come after you. I do one thing after I interview anybody. If someone says, "Oh yeah, my first album was released in 1980 and then I toured in 81, I will not take their word for it. I don't take the word of any musician because their memory, they're like your memory, like my memory. Sometimes they kind of forget years. So I have to double check everything every artist tells me. I remember in high school, I was a big fan of Genesis' The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. And I got into the habit of telling everyone that Peter Gabriel wrote everything on there. Oh, it was his concept album. He wrote those words, but the music was written by the band. I just got into the habit of saying it a certain way until someone corrected me and said, "Hey, buddy." So there's a possibility that knowledge of Jimi Hendrix for him was either never spoken out loud or people didn't challenge him. Another thing could be ignorance, of course. When Elvis Presley died in 1977, I was in the kitchen with my mother. I was 17 years old, and I remember my mom had this weird look on her face. And I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "Elvis just died." And being ignorant and young and stupid, I went, "Who cares?" Like, that's pure ignorance. The guy was the king of rock and roll for a reason. Whether I liked his music or not, it was still Elvis Presley. And sometimes with crazy comments like that, flippant comments, and there's a lot on YouTube, people don't think before they talk. We should also point out that sometimes celebrities, musicians stop maturing once they become celebrities. That's a lot of fame for a lot of people. I don't know how I would have turned out if I became a rock star at 23, which is what happened to Casablancas. When that first album was released by The Strokes, he was only 23 years old. That album went platinum. It was a hit all over the world. He's 39 now. But again, he might be still playing that same old story about Jimi Hendrix. That might change now that the world has plowed down on him. That first album was Is This It? Their next 3 project peaked at number 4 in the US. The Strokes have had 12 singles. None of them have become top 40 hits, but we should keep in mind that's not really what they're about. All 12 of those songs charted and became hits on the alt-rock charts. Also, their album sales have declined since that debut album. The group has not released a full project since Calm Down Machine in 2013, and it did not do well. Casablancas' side project The Voids will release their second album, Virtue, on March 30th. I've been in radio for 35 years, but doing YouTube for the last 2-3 years, I've learned to double check things. And just because I think I know what year or what fact is surrounding whatever I'm going to talk about, I have to double check it. My old brain doesn't work the way it used to. And if I get things wrong, just like Casablancas, I'll hear about it from you. And rightly so. You're going to do this, you got to get your stuff right. If he's not an arrogant guy, chances are he feels maybe a little embarrassed about that. I mean, doesn't get much bigger than Jimi Hendrix when it comes to power from the 60s, except maybe the Beatles. Make sure you comment on our videos, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos. Also check out all our older videos. It's basically the history of rock in the last 3 years because we concentrate on new news on classic rock bands, classic prog bands, the stuff that we all grew up with. Check out our old videos. I'm John Bowden from Rock History Music.